When I think back to when I first met Jessica, it feels like a different lifetime. We were only 6 years old, two little girls standing awkwardly on the first day of elementary school, both clutching our backpacks like they were life jackets. I remember my mom nudging me forward, whispering, "Go say hi." I almost didn't. I was shy, the kind of kid who always hid behind her mom's legs. But Jessica, she was different. She looked right at me with this big grin, her brown curls bouncing, and said, "Want to be best friends?" Just like that. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just certainty. And from that day on, we were inseparable. We shared everything, our lunches, our secrets, our dreams. By middle school, everyone knew us as a package deal. If you invited Jessica, you invited me. If I got in trouble, Jessica was probably right there beside me, trying to cover for me. I can still picture us at 12 years old, lying on her bedroom floor, making promises in whispers like they were sacred vows. That we'd always be there for each other, that no boy, no rumor, no fight would ever tear us apart. We swore we'd graduate together, chase our dreams together, and even live next door to each other when we grew up. At that age, you believe those promises. You believe nothing can touch what feels unbreakable. But promises can shatter faster than glass. High school was where things started to change, though I didn't notice it at first. I was always the quiet one, the girl who loved reading and theater. Jessica was the outgoing one, the girl everyone noticed when she walked into a room. She didn't just talk, she commanded attention. She didn't just smile, she lit up the whole hallway. Teachers loved her, boys adored her, and even when girls pretended to hate her, you could see the envy in their eyes. And me? I was fine being in her shadow. At least, I told myself I was. The truth was, I'd always dreamed of being more than Jessica's best friend. I had my own passion, my own fire, singing. Music was where I felt alive, where I didn't need to compare myself to anyone else. I joined choir, auditioned for musicals, and poured every ounce of myself into it. But even there, Jessica was right beside me. At first, I loved it. We sang duets. We pushed each other to do better. But slowly, I started noticing things. The way she always had to sing louder, stand closer to the front, make sure the spotlight found her. It wasn't until sophomore year that I got my first real chance to step out of the shadows. Our school was holding auditions for a statewide talent competition, something that could launch you into college scholarships, maybe even more. For me, it felt like the chance of a lifetime. I spent weeks practicing, pouring myself into every note, imagining the day I'd finally prove to everyone, not just to Jessica, but to myself, that I could shine on my own. And Jessica? At first, she cheered me on. She sat on my bed as I rehearsed, clapping, teasing me about my dramatic hand gestures. She told me she believed in me, that I was born to do this. I believed her. That's the thing about best friends. You don't question their words. You trust them. I didn't realize then that underneath that encouragement was something darker. Something she never said out loud. The day of auditions, I'll never forget how nervous I was. My hands were trembling, my throat dry, but the moment I walked onto that stage, everything else melted away. The lights hit my face, and for the first time in my life, I felt it, that I belonged here. That this was my world. When I finished, people actually stood up. They clapped, cheered, even whistled. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. And then, backstage, Jessica hugged me tight. "You were amazing," she whispered. "I'm so proud of you." But her eyes didn't match her words. They weren't happy. They were sharp, calculating. I brushed it off. I told myself I was imagining it. I wasn't. Because a week later, at the announcement ceremony, just when I thought my name was about to be called, Jessica did something I never could have prepared for. Something that would rip apart not just my dreams, but the very foundation of our friendship. But before that moment, before the betrayal that would leave me broken, I want you to understand just how much I trusted her. How much I loved her. How much I believed that no matter what happened, Jessica would always have my back. That's what makes betrayal hurt the most. It doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the person you trusted more than anyone else. And I had no idea my world was about to change forever. The night before the results of the audition were announced, Jessica and I sat in my room like we always did, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by open bags of chips, soda cans, and piles of notebooks filled with doodles and lyrics we'd scribbled down together over the years. It should have felt like just another night, one of those countless evenings where nothing mattered except us. But I couldn't shake the nervousness in my chest. "I know you're gonna get it," Jessica said, tossing a chip into her mouth. She leaned back against my bed frame like she didn't have a care in the world. "They'd be stupid not to pick you." I smiled, trying to let her words calm me. "You think so?" "I know so," she replied. But again, there was that flicker in her eyes. That sharpness. Like she was studying me, weighing me against something I couldn't see. At the time, I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe she was anxious for me. Maybe she just wanted me to succeed so badly that she was stressing herself out. After all, she was my best friend. The person who had promised, time and time again, that she'd always stand by me. We stayed up late, laughing, joking, even planning how we'd celebrate if I won. Jessica talked about renting a limo and showing up to school like we were celebrities, about how she'd bragged to everyone that she'd known me before I was famous. I laughed, not realizing just how bitter those words would sound only hours later. When I finally lay in bed, staring at the glow in the dark stars stuck to my ceiling since 5th grade, I told myself that tomorrow would be the beginning of everything I'd ever dreamed of. I didn't know it would also be the end of everything I thought I knew about my best friend. The next morning, the auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, students, everyone was buzzing with excitement. The finalists were all seated in the front row, including me and Jessica. That's right, she had auditioned too. She hadn't told me at first, only mentioning it after the fact. "Oh, I just tried out for fun," she had shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. And I believed her. We sat side by side as the principal stepped up to the microphone, his voice echoing across the gym. My heart pounded with each name he read, waiting, praying, clutching Jessica's hand so tightly I thought she'd pull away. She didn't. She squeezed back, smiling at me, whispering, "This is it." And then, my name. The sound of it filled the room, followed by applause, cheers, even a few gasps. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I looked at Jessica, expecting her to be cheering louder than anyone else. And she was smiling. But it didn't reach her eyes. Then the principal called one more name. Jessica's. The two of us, best friends since we were 6 years old, had both been chosen. We should have been celebrating together. It should have been the happiest day of our lives. But something in her shifted that day. At first, it was small. She made jokes about how she'd have to keep me humble when I got famous. She teased me about crying when I heard my name. Everyone laughed, including me. But inside, I felt this strange unease. That unease grew in the days that followed. The competition meant rehearsals, interviews, publicity, stuff we'd never experienced before. I was nervous, stumbling through it, while Jessica thrived. Cameras loved her. Teachers doted on her. Parents whispered about how charismatic she was. And me? I was the girl who could sing, but only when the spotlight was on. I started to notice how Jessica would answer questions for me in interviews, how she'd joke about my quirks in ways that made people laugh at me instead of with me. I'd catch her watching me sometimes, her smile just a little too tight, her laugh just a little too forced. Still, I clung to our friendship. I told myself I was imagining things. She was my best friend. She'd never hurt me. But then came the night of the showcase. The biggest night of our lives. The one that would decide everything. I was backstage, pacing, trying to calm my nerves, when Jessica appeared. She looked stunning, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless, her dress sparkling under the lights. She hugged me, whispering, "You're going to crush this. I'm so proud of you." I believed her. I walked on stage, heart racing, and sang my heart out. Every note, every word, every breath felt like it came from somewhere deep inside me. And when I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood up, clapping, cheering, calling my name. I had never felt so alive. I ran off stage, tears in my eyes, and there was Jessica waiting. She hugged me again, whispering, "You were incredible." But when she pulled back, her smile had changed. It wasn't warm. It wasn't proud. It was cold, calculating. And then, when it was her turn to sing, she didn't just perform, she performed me. She told the audience stories I had shared with her in confidence, weaving them into her introduction. She mimicked my quirks, exaggerated my insecurities, even joked about how I was the dramatic one who cried over everything. People laughed. They clapped. They loved her. And when she sang, she was flawless. By the end of the night, everyone was buzzing about Jessica, about her voice, her charm, her presence. I was an afterthought, the girl who had sung beautifully but had been overshadowed by the best friend who knew exactly how to twist the knife without anyone noticing. I tried to brush it off, telling myself she hadn't meant it that way, that she was just being funny, that maybe I was too sensitive. But deep down, something broke that night, something I couldn't put back together. And I didn't know it yet, but the real betrayal, the one that would shatter me completely, was still coming. Because Jessica wasn't done. Not even close. After the showcase, it felt like the entire school was buzzing with Jessica's name. She was on everyone's lips, the girl who stole the show. Teachers praised her in the hallways. Students followed her around like she was some kind of celebrity, and even parents I barely knew were coming up to shake her hand. Me? People said nice things. "You were amazing too," or "You have such a beautiful voice." But the emphasis was always on the two. I was second. Always second. The shadow to Jessica's light. I tried not to let it get to me. I told myself that friendship mattered more than recognition. That Jessica and I had promised that no matter what happened, we'd have each other's backs. But the promise that had once felt unshakable was starting to feel fragile, like a glass ornament balanced on a shelf just waiting for the slightest push to send it crashing. And then, she pushed. It started with whispers. Little things I'd hear walking past groups of students in the cafeteria. Snickers when I entered the locker room. A sudden hush when I walked into class. At first, I thought I was imagining it. High school is filled with rumors, after all. But then one afternoon, I heard it clearly. "She acts so perfect on stage, but did you know her family's falling apart?" The words hit me like a punch. I froze, my tray of food trembling in my hands. How could they know? My family's struggles weren't something I ever talked about publicly. Sure, Jessica knew, of course she did. She'd been there for me through late night phone calls, through the fights I overheard between my parents, through the nights I cried about feeling like I wasn't enough. She knew everything. But no one else was supposed to. I forced myself to sit down, heart pounding, praying that maybe I had misheard. But the next day, it happened again. Different voices, same story. They knew. They knew my dad had left. They knew about the bills piling up. They knew about the nights my mom worked double shifts, leaving me to eat dinner alone. And there was only one person who could have told them. Jessica. I wanted to confront her, but how could I? What if I was wrong? What if someone else had somehow found out? I couldn't bring myself to accuse her without proof. So I tried to swallow it, tried to keep my head down, tried to pretend it wasn't eating me alive. But it only got worse. One afternoon, just a week before the final round of the competition, Jessica and I were sitting in the library. She was scrolling on her phone, laughing at memes, while I tried to focus on the sheet music in front of me. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Jess," I said quietly, "people have been talking. About me. About my family. Do you know anything about that?" She didn't even look up from her phone. Oh, come on. High schoolers gossip about everything. You can't take it so seriously. Yeah, but they knew things that I hesitated. Things only you knew. That made her pause. She finally set her phone down and looked at me, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she just stared. Then she smiled. But it wasn't the warm, friendly smile I'd known my whole life. It was cold. Sharp. You know, she said softly. Sometimes I wonder if maybe you shouldn't be in this competition. I mean, you've got a lot going on at home. Stress, drama. Maybe it's too much for you. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Singing is the only thing keeping me sane right now. Exactly, she said, leaning forward, her voice low. You need it too much. That's dangerous. People can see that desperation. It makes you look weak. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. This was my best friend, the girl who had sworn she'd always have my back, telling me I wasn't strong enough, telling me I didn't belong. And then, with a little shrug, she added, besides, even if you don't win, you'll still be my best friend. That's what matters, right? I forced a smile, nodding, even as my chest ached. But inside, I felt the ground shifting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her tone, that icy smile. For the first time, I let myself admit something I had been too scared to consider before. Maybe Jessica didn't want me to succeed. Maybe she didn't want me to shine. The final competition was just days away, and I was terrified, not of performing, but of what Jessica might do. She had already leaked pieces of my personal life. She had already chipped away at my confidence. What else was she capable of? The answer came faster than I expected. The night of the finals, the auditorium was even more packed than before. Local news stations had come to film, scholarship scouts sat in the audience, and the energy was electric. I should have been excited. This was the night I had dreamed about for years. But as I stood backstage, clutching my sheet music, I couldn't stop shaking. Jessica was beside me, calm and collected, her dress shimmering under the lights. She leaned close and whispered, break a leg. Remember, no matter what happens, I'll always be here. But her eyes told me otherwise. When it was my turn to perform, I walked out into the spotlight, forcing myself to breathe. I sang like my life depended on it, pouring every ounce of my soul into the music. And for a few minutes, I felt free again. I felt powerful. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could rise above everything. The applause was thunderous. I bowed, tears in my eyes, and ran off stage. And then, it was Jessica's turn. She didn't start with a song. She started with a story. My story. She stood there, smiling sweetly as she told the audience about a girl, me, who had grown up in a broken home. She described the nights of shouting, the empty dinner table, the father who walked out. She said it with such charm, such confidence, that people laughed, people gasped, people leaned in like it was entertainment. And then she said my name. The audience turned, eyes on me, whispers spreading like wildfire. My secrets. My pain. Exposed. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest constricted, my vision blurred, and my whole body shook. She had taken the most vulnerable parts of me and turned them into a performance. And the worst part? They loved her for it. When she finally sang, they cheered louder than they had for me. She didn't just steal my spotlight, she burned it to the ground. As I sat there, frozen, broken, humiliated in front of everyone I knew, one thought repeated in my head, over and over like a cruel song. My best friend had betrayed me, and nothing would ever be the same again. The applause for Jessica still rang in my ears long after it stopped. I sat backstage, staring at the floor, numb. My hands were clenched so tightly that my nails dug into my palms, but I couldn't feel it. All I could feel was the ache in my chest, the burn of humiliation spreading through me like fire. The audience had laughed. They had laughed at my pain. at stories that were never theirs to hear. Stories that I had trusted Jessica with. Secrets I had whispered through tears in the middle of the night, believing she was the one person who would keep them safe. And she had turned them into a performance. When the show ended, people rushed to congratulate her. Cameras swarmed around her. Classmates chattered excitedly about how real and authentic she was, and teachers gushed about her bravery in telling such a touching story. Touching story? It wasn't her story to tell. It was mine. I tried to leave quietly, slipping through the side exit before anyone could corner me. But the whispers followed. Is it true? Did her dad really leave? Wow, I can't believe she hid all that. No wonder she sings so emotionally. Her life's basically a soap opera. Each word felt like a slap. I made it home somehow, though I don't remember the drive. I locked myself in my room, collapsed onto my bed, and let the sobs rip through me. The betrayal wasn't just about the competition anymore. It wasn't about who won or lost. It was about trust. About the years of secrets, promises, and late-night whispers that Jessica had weaponized against me. For days, I avoided school. I told my mom I was sick, and she didn't press. Maybe she thought I needed space. Maybe she was too tired to ask. But eventually, I had to go back. Walking into those hallways felt like walking into enemy territory. Eyes followed me everywhere. Conversations hushed when I passed. People didn't see me as a person anymore. They saw me as the girl Jessica had painted on stage. The broken girl from the broken family. And Jessica? She acted like nothing had happened. The first time I saw her after the finals, she walked up to me with that same sweet smile and said, "Hey, you were amazing out there. I'm so glad we got to share this experience together." I stared at her, unable to form words. My throat tightened, my fists clenched. How could she pretend like she hadn't just gutted me in front of the entire town? Finally, I managed to whisper, "Why did you do it?" She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Do what?" "You told them everything," I hissed. "Stuff that was private. Stuff I trusted you with." Her smile faded, replaced by something colder. "I didn't tell them anything that wasn't true. And besides, people loved it. Don't you get it? That's what makes a great performance, raw honesty." I shook my head in disbelief. "That wasn't your honesty, Jess. That was mine." For a moment, her mask slipped. I saw the envy in her eyes, the hunger for attention, the satisfaction of finally standing above me. "You've always been the talented one," she said quietly. "The one everyone said had the voice. The one destined to make it. I was tired of being your sidekick. For once, I wanted to be the star." The words sliced through me. "You didn't have to destroy me to shine," I whispered. But she just shrugged, that cold smile curling back onto her lips. "Maybe not. But it worked, didn't it?" And with that, she walked away, leaving me standing there, shattered. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. The competition ended with Jessica being offered opportunities I could only dream of, local gigs, scholarship interviews, even a meeting with a talent scout. Me? I was a footnote. The girl people pitied. At home, things weren't much better. My mom tried to comfort me, telling me that one day people would see the truth, that I shouldn't let jealousy and lies define me. But she didn't understand how deep the wound went. It wasn't just about the stage. It was about losing my best friend. About realizing that the person I had trusted most was capable of destroying me without a second thought. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, staring at those same glow in the dark stars, replaying every moment of our friendship. Every promise we made. Every laugh. Every hug. Every whispered secret. Had it all been a lie? Had she been waiting all this time for the moment she could twist the knife? Part of me wanted to fight back. To tell people the truth, that Jessica wasn't brave. She wasn't authentic. She was manipulative. That she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But another part of me was terrified. What if no one believed me? What if speaking out only made things worse? So I stayed silent. Until the night everything came crashing down. It happened at a party a few weeks after the competition. I hadn't planned to go, but one of my choir friends begged me to come. "You can't hide forever," she said. "Besides, Jessica won't even be there." She was wrong. The moment I walked in, music thumping, lights flashing, I saw Jessica in the center of the room, laughing, surrounded by people. She looked untouchable, like the betrayal never happened. I tried to leave, but before I could, someone grabbed my arm. "Hey, aren't you the girl from the show? The one Jessica talked about?" My stomach twisted. "Yeah," I muttered, trying to pull away. The guy smirked. "Man, she made you sound pathetic. But hey, at least you've got a good voice, right?" Laughter erupted around me. My face burned. I wanted to disappear. And then Jessica noticed me. She pushed through the crowd, her eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally show some remorse. That she'd apologize, explain, beg for forgiveness. Instead, she smirked and said loudly, "Oh, come on, don't tease her. She's sensitive. You know she cries over everything." The room erupted with laughter. And that was it. The breaking point. Something inside me snapped. I didn't cry, not this time. I didn't shrink back. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You think you're the star, Jessica? All you did was prove to everyone that you'll step on anyone to get attention. Even your best friend." The room went silent. Jessica's smile faltered for the first time. People shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't hers. I walked out, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than pain. I felt power. Because I realized something that night. Jessica had taken everything from me, but she couldn't take my voice. She couldn't take the truth. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally ready to use it. Walking out of that party, I felt lighter than I had in months. For the first time since Jessica betrayed me, I wasn't crying or hiding. I wasn't carrying her shadow on my back. I had looked her in the eye, told her the truth, and walked away. And it felt freeing. But freedom doesn't erase pain. The next morning, the fallout began. People were buzzing about what I said, about how I had finally stood up to Jessica in front of everyone. Some sided with her, saying I was just jealous. Others whispered that maybe she wasn't as perfect as she seemed. For the first time, cracks were showing in her carefully built image. And for the first time, I realized I didn't care what people thought. Because this wasn't about them. It wasn't about the competition, the applause, or even the betrayal anymore. It was about me. About who I was when the lights went out and the music stopped. I had spent so much of my life defining myself by Jessica, by our friendship, by our promises, by the way people always compared us. I had been her shadow, her confidant, her safety net. And when she turned on me, I lost myself completely. But standing there at that party, calling her out, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time, my voice. The next few weeks weren't easy. Jessica tried to spin the story, of course. She cried in front of teachers, claiming I had humiliated her. She told classmates I was unstable, that I couldn't handle the pressure of the competition, that I was making her out to be the villain because I couldn't stand losing. The old me might have crumbled under that. But this time, I didn't. When people asked me what happened, I told them the truth. Calmly. Honestly. Without bitterness, without exaggeration. I told them Jessica had shared my secrets without my permission, that she had turned my pain into her performance, that she had betrayed the trust of someone who had loved her like a sister. And slowly, people started to listen. Not everyone, of course. Some were too enamored with Jessica's charm to ever see past it. But a few important ones, believed me. My choir teacher, who had known me for years. A couple of close friends who had seen the way Jessica treated me backstage. Even students I barely talked to came up and said, "I'm sorry. That wasn't right. It didn't erase the hurt, but it reminded me that I wasn't invisible. Then came the letter. I'll never forget the day it arrived. A thick envelope addressed to me with the letterhead of one of the biggest performing arts colleges in the country. My hands shook as I opened it, my heart racing. I had been offered a scholarship. Not because of Jessica. Not because of pity. But because of me. Because of my performance, my voice, my passion. I broke down crying right there in the kitchen, the letter clutched in my hands. My mom rushed over, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. I told you, she whispered. I told you your voice would take you places. Don't ever let anyone steal it from you again. That was the moment I knew I was going to be okay. Jessica could take the spotlight. She could have the attention, the followers, the applause. But she could never take the one thing that truly mattered, my ability to turn my pain into music. My voice wasn't just a talent. It was my survival. Graduation came and went. Jessica and I barely spoke. When we crossed paths, there was no yelling, no confrontation, just silence. A silence that spoke louder than any words ever could. She went on to chase the spotlight, but word spread. People started to see through her act. The same charm that once captivated everyone began to wear thin when people realized how often she twisted the truth to get what she wanted. And me? I left for college, terrified but hopeful. I still remember my first day on campus, standing on stage in a massive auditorium, looking out at rows of empty seats. For a moment, I froze, the memories of everything I'd endured flooding back. The betrayal. The laughter. The nights I cried myself to sleep. But then I took a deep breath and sang. The sound filled the room, echoing off the walls, wrapping around me like a promise. My promise. Not to Jessica, not to anyone else, but to myself. That no matter what, I would never let anyone silence me again. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Jessica. About the little girls we used to be, lying on her bedroom floor, making promises we thought were unbreakable. I wonder if she ever misses me, if she ever regrets what she did. Part of me hopes she does. Part of me hopes she realizes what she lost when she traded our friendship for applause. But a bigger part of me doesn't care anymore. Because I've learned that betrayal doesn't define me. Pain doesn't define me. What defines me is how I rise from it. How I turn the darkest parts of my story into something beautiful. And if Jessica taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes the people who promise to always have your back are the very ones who push you down. But sometimes, losing them is the only way to find yourself. The night of my first real college performance, standing in front of hundreds of strangers, I felt the weight of everything I had been through. My voice shook at first, but then I remembered that girl who walked out of a party with her head high, who refused to be silenced anymore. And I sang like I had never sung before. When the applause came, it wasn't about proving anything to anyone, not to the audience, not to Jessica, not even to myself. It was about freedom. About finally stepping into the light without fear, without shame, without shadows. For the first time, the spotlight was mine. And this time, I knew I deserved it.